Hello everybody and welcome back to another Pokémon Emerald video. Today I will be playing through the game with another of the fossil Pokémons from the first generation. Kabutops looks a lot more menacing than Omastar because of those scythe hands, so let's hope that it will have an easy time getting through the game. For the rules, I can only use my starter in combat. I cannot use consumables from my bag in battle, I can't raise my evasion in any way, and I can't use cheats or glitches. Kabutops is a bit of a weird Pokemon. It has a lot of attack, and that makes sense with those hands. Unfortunately, since we are in the third generation, all water attacks are considered special, so I cannot really take advantage of that side of the move pool. Another weird thing is that it starts with Absorb and can learn Mega Drain and Giga Drain. Once again, those moves are special, so they will not be that useful, but considering that there are a lot of water types, maybe there is still a use for them. At least I can still use my good attack with the rock moves, but unfortunately they are not exactly great. The best thing I can learn is Ancient Power, but that is very far away because Kabutops learns it at level 65. For the fight against Roxanne, I can use Absorb. Having that move in my moveset helps me out a great deal because the two Geodudes are 4 times weak to that, and so they go down very easily. The same cannot be said about Nosepass. That Pokemon loses the ground typing, and so it is not as weak to grass, and also has better stats. Between that and my low special attack, the damage from Absorb is very little unless I crit, and the fight against it takes a long time, especially because she has berries and potions to use on her ace Pokemon. Eventually I can run through all of that HP, and Nosepass finally falls too, allowing me to get the first badge of the region. Now that we have defeated the first gym, there are a couple other things that we have to do around town. Starting with the side quest to rescue the Wingull. The Puchiena from the Team Aqua Grant is very frail and so it gets one-shotted by Scratch. Honestly, I don't think the crit was necessary. Next, before leaving, we can take on the optional fight against our rival. This battle was quite hard for Omastar because of the 4 times weakness to grass, and even though Kabutops shares it, because I am faster, I can defeat Trico before it can do too much damage to me and take me down. Of course, I skipped Brawly because I do not have anything great to deal with his Pokémons, especially if they start setting up their defense with the Bulk Up. Instead, I can go to Slateport, where there are a couple more Team Aqua Grants who want to steal some engine parts. Their Pokémons are very frail, and so with a couple of scratches, I can get through them very easily. Once we have defeated them and listened to Archie rant for a while, we can train a bit more because the next major fight is going to be against our rival again. This time she is much more dangerous because she evolved her starter, but this time a bit of luck allows me to defeat it in one hit with a crit, saving me the pain of dealing with Grovyle. Also, you may have noticed that like Omastar, Kabutops learned Mudshot. Once again, this move is going to be extremely useful against the next gym. Wattson is very weak to ground attacks, and unlike Omastar, since I am very fast today, I can outspeed and one-shot all of his Pokémons, assuming that Mudshot does not miss. Fortunately, that does not happen, and so I can sweep through his team in a matter of a few turns. By getting this badge too, we can use Rock Smash out of combat, and thanks to that we can explore the rest of the region. After a while, we can reach the Meteorfall Caves, where we meet the Team Aqua and Magma. Here we are also informed about Max's plan to trigger the volcano to wake up the legendary Pokémon Groudon. To try to stop him, we climb the mountain and challenge him to a duel. The fight against him is going to be a bit annoying because my Tiena has Intimidate, and since I am mostly relying on physical attacks, this could be problematic. Strangely enough, I get 2 crits in this fight, making it a lot easier than it was supposed to be. Anyway, now that we have solved that problem, we have to go to the next town, where we have to face the Fire Gym Leader. Against Flannery, I started off using Sacred Power. I'm not sure why, I think I forgot about Mudshot, but around halfway through I realized that I have that move and switched to the super effective attack. That was sort of needed because Secret Power does not do a whole lot to Torkoal. Instead, Mudshot is a 2-hit KO, so even though she tries to heal, the Torkoal is defeated soon after. Now that we have defeated Flannery and got her badge, we have to start the backtracking. The first stop we have to go to is Brawly because I skipped him earlier. Of course, since I am coming here much later than I was supposed to, the fight against him is not particularly impressive. All of his Pokémon are a one-hit KO with a normal move, and so this fight is done too. Now that we have the first 4 badges, we have to backtrack a tiny bit more until we reach the gym headed by our father. Norman and his normal types should not be too dangerous as long as I remember about Slacking's counter. Their stab attacks are going to be resisted thanks to my typing, and so their damage should not be that great otherwise. I had to use Absorb against Slacking whenever he could move, since that is the only non-physical attack I had. To be honest, his Ace is still able to deal decent damage to me with Feint Attack. Even though that move is not particularly powerful, Slacking still has a respectable 90 special attack. Eventually I was able to defeat the big Yeti, but fell asleep from a yawn. That could have been much worse if it happened against Linoon, since that Pokémon can set up to +6 with the Belly Drum, and then he will still be able to deal decent damage. After a few turns of taking hits from Vigoroth, I can wake up and defeat the rest of his team. By defeating this gym, we are given the Surf HM, and even though that could have been a decent option from Kabutops, I still did not teach it. I have to instead use it out of combat to reach the Weather Institute, where we find the Team Aqua Admiral Shelley holding some hostages. We defeat her with ease since her team is not very powerful, and then we can move on to the next fight against our rival. May could be dangerous here, mostly because her starter now has a Leaf Blade, but since I can defeat Grovyle before it can move, that turned out to not be a problem. Next up, we have the fight against the 6th gym leader, Winona and her flying types. Once again, this should be easy for us, since we have the type advantage. Unfortunately, I do not have much choice in which rock move I can use, and so I had to spam Rock Tomb and hope that it would not miss too often. There were a few misses here and there, but overall it could have been much worse. I was even able to two-shot the Skarmory so that it could not spam Sand Attack too much. Now that we have obtained the Fly badge, we can walk to the next town over, where we have to deal with the last optional fight against May. This time around she improved her team slightly by adding a Tropius, but since that Pokémon is flying, it goes down in a single attack. The rest of the team is not much different from our previous encounter, and so once again I can take care of her without losing any HP. And now that she is gone, I can access the substitute move that I will surely use later. Next, we make a visit to the Pokémon Cemetery, where we are given the Magma Emblem, and with this key item we can infiltrate the cave where Groudon is. Here, after sweeping through a bunch of Team Magma grunts, we can get to the legendary, but we are too late as we see Maxie wake it up with the wrong orb. After the legendary runs away, the Team Magma boss fights us, and this time around it was a bit more challenging. Mightyena lands a Swagger on me, which is great because now I have a decent amount of attack, but also I hit myself a few times, getting my HP kinda low. Fortunately, I can get through the fight without having to reset, and so we can move on with the story. Our next fight is going to be in the Team Aqua base, where we arrive a bit too late again and can only find one of their Admiral. His team is not particularly powerful, and so with a few attacks I can get through it, even though I get my attack lowered by Intimidate once again. Next, I had to do quite a bit of grinding, because the next major fight is going to be the 7th badge. Tate and Liza are kinda difficult, and I did lose a couple of times, but things seemed somewhat doable, and so instead of leveling even more, I attempted them a few times. There are a bunch of problems for Kabutops in this fight. First of all is the Earthquake from Claydol, then we have Solrock with the Solar Beam that can one-shot me, and of course we have the Calm Mind spamming Pokémons that after a couple of them can do massive damage with the Psychic. And of course I do not have any great moves to deal with them. In the successful attempt I got lucky and their Pokémons were a bit passive and on the defensive, which gave me enough turns to defeat them. Once we are done with that gym, we have to do the other double fight of the island. Thankfully this time around we are not alone, but we are aided by Steven. Or better said, we are helping Steven defeat the Team Magma. This fight is not particularly dangerous, because even though the Camerapts know a ground move, they rarely use it. It is also going to be a bit long and annoying because I cannot block the Intimidates from their Mightyenas yet, and so my damage output is going to be somewhat low, and it will take a few turns to defeat their Pokémons. At the very least, we are somewhat safe because Metang kept spamming screens, and so the damage I take is not going to be very high. The only thing that could go through that is hitting myself in confusion, but fortunately they did not target me with confusing moves very often. After a whole bunch of turns spamming a return, I can finally defeat the last of their Pokémons, and so we are done with this fight too. As a reward, we are given the Dive HM from Steven, and we have to immediately use it to reach the Seafloor Cave. Here we find the legendary Pokémon Groudon and are soon approached by the Team Aqua boss. He tries to fight us to get the privilege of waking up the legendary, but of course the fight against him is not too problematic. The intimidate problem is still in full effect, but other than that, this team should not be particularly dangerous. After bonking our way through his Pokémons, we have defeated him, but of course that is not enough to stop the plot of the game. Kyogre gets woken up anyway, and now that both legendaries are active, their weather abilities are conflicting with each other, making the weather in the region a mess. To put an end to their fighting and the destruction, we ask Rayquaza for help, and the third legendary is more than willing to come down from the sky and stop the other two legendaries. Once we have rescued the planet, we can get back to the badge collection, and our last enemy is going to be Juan. He mostly uses water types, which is not that great for me. I do not have any super effective move, at least any decent one, to deal with them, and so I had to spam return over and over, hoping that my damage output and tankiness would be enough to endure my way through this team. Surprisingly, Kabutops is able to one-shot all of them with a return, so it turns out I was worried for nothing. And now that we have all of the badges, we can finally enter the Victory Road, where we are soon stopped by the rival Wally. His Pokémon team is very heterogeneous and has a lot of different typings. Most of them are not going to be that big of a problem for us, assuming that I do not get the status effect. Even Magneton, who could be a dangerous matchup, is defeated thanks to the fact that I still have Mudshot in my moveset. His last few Pokémons are not that dangerous, maybe a bit tanky, but eventually I can defeat them too, and we are done with this fight. After clearing my way through the rest of the cave, I can get to the league, and here, after a bit of setup, I can finally enter. Our first match is going to be against Sidney and his dark types. For this fight, I could have used the Brick Break TM to get a super effective move on them, but I preferred to keep Mudshot, at least for now. I was worried that with only Ancient Power for Phoebe, I would not have enough PPs to defeat her. And for Sidney, between a Return and Ancient Power, I should have enough damage to get through his team, even though Ancient Power was once again a bit annoying and did not give me any boosts. After a bit of fighting and mostly letting my substitute take the hits for me, I can defeat the last of his Pokémons, and so we are done with the first of the Elite Four. For Phoebe, since I was still worried about the PP issue, I equipped a Leppa Berry, but unfortunately that was not quite enough to get me through her in the first attempt. Mostly because there are quite a few Pokémons with Thunderbolt, Earthquake and other super effective moves. In the second attempt, things went mostly the same, with the second Banette destroying my sub and leaving me exposed. Thankfully, this time around, I finally got an Omni Boost, and with those extra stats, I was more than capable enough to take on the rest of her team. Thanks to the extra defenses, my sub can leave a hit from Dusclops, protecting me from earthquakes, and once that tanky Pokémon is defeated, I can sweep through the remaining of her team. Now that we have taken down the second of the Elite Four, we are about ready to take on the third one. Glacia could be a bit problematic because her Pokémons are quite tanky and she was not that easy with Omastar. Today things are going to be a bit different, mostly because since Ancient Power is physical and Kabutops has a lot of physical attack, Ancient Power, even though it's not super powerful, it is still good enough to one-shot or at worst two-shot her Pokémons. I did get an Omni Boost halfway through the fight, but I don't think it was needed, as my damage output was very good even without it. Next, we have to go and take on the 4th Elite Four, who is Drake and his Dragon Pokémons. This fight might be kinda hard. He has a lot of fast Pokémons, and many of them have good special attacks. At the start of the match against Shelgon, I set up a sub to be safe, and I also tried to fish for a boost, but that did not work. Flygon is able to survive a hit and of course blow away my sub. From there, things could have been very bad if he sent out Salamence, but instead he sent out Altaria. That is a much easier Pokémon to deal with, and I can even set up another substitute. Substitute who is able to survive all the way through his ace, where it finally goes down to a Dragon Claw. That was very good still, because with the Intimidate blocked, Ancient Power is a two-shot, and so after Drake uses up all of his potions, I can finally defeat this guy too. At long last, I can take on the champion, and the fight against him was not easy at all. I was unable to set up a proper substitute, and without it, Ludicolo was more than capable of one-shotting me with Giga Drain. It took a few attempts, but finally I can get a solid start. I just needed to figure out how to deal with Wailord and still keep the sub, because he always sends out Gyarados second, and without it, the attack drop is too much to deal with. In this attempt, I even got fortunate enough to get an Omni Boost, and from here, things went much better. I recovered all of my HP on Whiscash, and this time around, Ludicolo was a one-shot. Without that big threat on his team, things were definitely looking good for me, and even though my Lotic and Tentacruel were quite tanky, I was still able to two-shot them before I ran out of BPs or HP. Even though Kabutops ended the game with less resets than Omastar, it felt harder to use. It feels bad to not have a stab water attack, and since the best option for rock attacks is only Ancient Power, that was a bit of a waste too. Anyway, thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like, subscribe, ring the bell and all of that. If you have any video ideas, comments, feedback, leave them down below, and I'll see you next week. Bye!